You. Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. Those of you who are joining us live here on the webinar and those who are watching the replay afterwards. My name is Jennifer and my company's under the name Jennifer Janelle. My name is Jennifer Martin and I offer care here, compassionate care. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to explore this idea of soul conversations for living fully, supporting care providers and healers and sacred service professionals. You spend your days holding space for others. And so today, this space is for you. I have a deck here. I'll be moving through some of the slides, not all of them. This deck will be available for you after the session. It'll come out in an email and we'll look at dropping a link here into the live session if you want to follow along with me. So my hope is that you'll rest back and listen, see if it's possible to minimize some distractions here, that the talk today is a time for you to restore, to remember, and to potentially learn some things that may be supportive for you as you explore this idea of caring for yourself so that you can restore and continue to care for others. We'll begin with an introduction and some intentions. We'll explore several practices and self-inquiry that are oriented towards unseen burdens in being a care provider, and also self-compassion and self-attunement. And then we'll conclude with your aligned action moving forward from this session and next steps. So we'll already begin by dropping in for a mindful moment. I'll talk a bit about myself, my background. One of the hats that I wear is a meditation teacher, right? Offering spiritual inquiry and practices. And so we may begin from wherever we are, wherever we're transitioning to, into this time to listen, learn, and remember. And we might do that by exploring a practice that supports us being a little more present right here, wherever you've come from, this transition from your day into a period of practice, of listening and of remembering. And so this practice, my teacher says, as often as possible, can we practice being where my feet are? It's so normal for our minds to bring us all over the place, future, past. And what would it be like to practice being where my feet are? And so this practice is called 5-4-3-2-1. And this is a mindfulness practice that may support us in cultivating that present awareness as we begin. So notice if you could be 10% more comfortable in your seat wherever you are. And we'll begin by looking for 5 things that you see. So you might look over one shoulder and just kind of scan the room, identifying 5 things that you see. And when you see an object, just resting, noticing the colors, the shapes, looking around, orienting to the space that you're in, the space that you're practicing in today. 5 different things that you see. And this practice of scanning the room and looking over our shoulders sends a signal to our primal part of our brain that we're safe. There's not a saber-toothed tiger trying to attack us right now. So any scanning that feels interesting, and 5 things that you see, shapes, colors. And then we'll look at 4 things that you feel. So this sensory experience of touch. Perhaps it's the fabric wrapped around your skin. Maybe the floor rising up to hold you, the parts of your body supported by the surface below. Any sensations of warmth or coolness. 4 things that you feel. And then perhaps 3 things that you hear. 3 things that you hear. Could be the sound of my voice, the sound in your environment, maybe the sound of your breath. You might notice 2 things that you taste. 2 things that you taste, the sensation of taste right here, right now. And perhaps one thing that you smell, your detergent, a scent in the room. And then this moment to arrive here where our feet are, in this present moment, right here, right now. Maybe taking a breath or any other thing that will help you transition into this period of listening and practice. There's no need to be calm. It doesn't need to feel good. This practice of being with our humanity exactly as it is expressing without making ourselves wrong. So continuing to settle into your space, resting back. As I mentioned, this deck will be available for you. And so this idea of what would it be like to rest back and listen, to receive the information rather than feeling like we need to necessarily engage with it in our mind right now. My name is Jennifer, and I live, create, and offer care on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, which is also known as Northwestern Washington. This deck has quite a few slides with a lot of detail on it, and it'll be a resource for you afterwards if you want to dig in and learn more and give yourself some mind food. I'm going to talk briefly over the slides because my hope is that we'll have a lot of time for experiential practice today. I offer person-centered care at the intersection of spirituality, embodiment practices, wellness coaching, and behavioral health. For the last 25 years, I have studied with spiritual teachers and therapists, mental health professionals, to learn. I have an insatiable desire to learn and study and explore both the outer world and my inner landscape. And I love to share these practices with others. That's what lights me up. That's why I do what I do. I wear many different hats in my current community care that I offer, from being a board member on a nonprofit to being a board certified health and wellness coach, offering spiritual companionship, death care, grief care, embodiment practices. And all of this to say that I care wildly and deeply. I was born in the late 70s, and so I love the Care Bears. This just, is a big part of who I am, so much that I was having a conversation with my brother and told him, I feel like my soul's essence is a mix of a Care Bear, Eeyore, and a forest fairy. And taking that conversation, my sweet brother went and created an image of what might be my soul essence. And I felt so seen in this, right? That I can look at all these aspects of myself and find that, yeah, that feels like that's what's going on underneath the surface in here. And so because today's conversation is about soul conversations, sharing this little glimpse into what's going on in my soul. I deeply believe that sharing community in grief and death is one of the most potent and powerful ways to feel connected to life and identify what is most meaningful. I am passionate about creating and sharing spaces that offer the opportunity for this exploration and the opportunity to speak your truth without having to make it palatable for others. Today, I'm here as a peer and a companion, right? This conversation is for care providers in all different aspects: healers, therapists, medical care, caregivers. And I know that you are the expert of you, that your lived experience is your greatest teacher. And so, as I share different pieces of information today and ideas and perspectives, my hope is not that you agree with everything that I share. It's that it points you to your truth and remembering your wholeness. I love this meme here. It really hits me very deeply. I deeply wish that you feel your worth in my presence, your wholeness, this remembering. I'm so grateful you're here today. So I've shared my intention, a bit about me, and you might take a moment right now and get curious, why are you here? If at the end of this session you were to say, Ah, that's exactly what I needed. What would have happened? And this remembering that it's okay if we don't know. At times when we're overwhelmed or feeling lost or there's a lot going on, we don't always know what we need or what our intention is, and that it's absolutely enough to show up and let it unfold through the experience. Some of the topics today are exploring different emotional states. This can be vulnerable, this can be tender. And so I love this idea of emotions as energy in motion. I believe that emotions are superpowers, and this idea that emotions want to move. And so, at any point today that you feel any emotional responses, this curiosity, how can I let this move today? Do I want to give myself a hug? Do I want to sigh? Do I want to stretch? Do I want to rock or sway or dance or write it out? This permission to move during the practice today as we explore different concepts, but also embodiment of these things. And to always care for yourself. Notice what you need throughout the session. Walk away from the screen, turn the video off, hydrate, take a break, enjoy some beauty medicine. I love this concept of beauty medicine. I've dropped several pictures of things that evoke beauty, wonder, and awe for me. This opportunity to drop in and see, is there anything that offers some beauty medicine for you as you listen and remember? And if at all possible, being able to minimize distractions, putting down the phone, turning off screens that aren't looking here. And if that's not possible, that's okay too. You'll always know what's best for you moment to moment. This is a lifelong practice. So this idea that we'll be exploring different topics, different practices, and this isn't a sprint. This is a long, long, long exploration of practicing these things. So to remember that we really look at practice and presence over perfection, that we continue to show up and do the best we can moment to moment, and that all of you is welcome here. So let's have another practice. Like I said, today, there is some mind food. There are some things I'm going to talk about, but I like the example of it's like I'm giving a session on ice cream. I can talk about it. I can tell you all about how it's made and all the different components and nuances. And yet we need to taste it. We need to get in and try it out to see what is my experience in this? What's my truth? And so we'll have a mix of this talking and tasting as we move through, and we'll have another practice now. So if you could be 10% more comfortable wherever you are, you might be at work, you might be at home, you might be in a personal office, wherever you are right now. Just taking a moment to notice how you can support the body. And you might rest back into a chair, into the surface below. If you have the opportunity to lay down, that's always available too. And notice where you'd like your hands to rest. So maybe the backs of the hands rest on the tops of the legs or on the desk in front of you. Maybe they want to rest on the body somewhere, on the heart or the belly, torso, or any surface that's nearby you. You could see if you like your palms facing up or down. Your eyes could be softly open or gently closed. And we're going to practice a meditation called tense and release. And so we'll start to notice the movement of the breath. And you're going to find an inhale that feels just right for you, and an exhale that feels just right for you. Hands resting on the surface below, body resting on the surface below. And the next time you inhale, we're going to spread the fingers and toes wide into the room or socks or shoes. And then on the exhale, the fingers and toes are going to soften. So staying with this just right breath for you, spreading on the inhale, and just right breath on the exhale, releasing, letting go. And this is the movement, simple, not always easy though. So we practice. With every inhale, this expansion, this activation. And with every exhale, this softening and rest. And as you inhale, if it feels interesting, you could tense the limbs, the arms, the legs, maybe even the torso gently. And then exhale, release. You can go faster, slower than I'm going. With every inhale, this gentle tension through the whole body. And with every exhale, this release and softening and letting go. And continuing like this, the movement here is this tense and release. The breath perhaps syncs up, the inhale, the aliveness, the activation, the exhale, the release, the restoration. For some of us, we may want to bring in visualization. You could inhale a color of light into the body, this activation, and then as you exhale, releasing, letting go. Anything that doesn't serve us, stress, tension, inhaling and exhaling just right for you. With each exhale, this opportunity to let go of something, a burden, a tension that you're carrying, and just letting it melt away off into the earth. This aliveness and activation on the inhale, and this release and letting go on the exhale. And several more breaths here, just yours. Notice how you would like to spend that time. And as we turn towards the end of this particular practice, just taking a moment to notice any effect of this practice on the body, mind, spirit. What change have you created in this moment in your lived experience? You're welcome to rest here as long as you like, continuing to listen and receive, tensing and releasing. Following along with me as we continue to move through this exploration today. And a moment to mention that I do have this meditation and others on both Spotify and YouTube. I have a library of free meditations, and those will be included in this deck, as well as the email that we're going to send out afterwards if you'd like to practice again. So this idea of soul conversations, what does that even mean, right? What do soul conversations mean? And ultimately, the curiosity is, what does that mean to you? Soul means something different to each of us. And so can we get curious about, what does that mean to me? This slide has several ideas or definitions that people have used to describe soul. But what is it to you? What would that be for you? And for me, especially with this conversation and my intention here, these are reflections and practices that support you to connect to a deeper wisdom and knowing in yourself and the natural world. So a deeper wisdom and knowing in yourself and the natural world outside of our cognitive experience. I approach the work I do in the world as a meditation teacher and a coach. This is different from therapy, right? Mental health therapy. And I make the conceptual and the esoterical practical and livable. So we look at these understandings that we uncover, the things that we learn about ourselves, the world around us. And then the curiosity is, how do I make it meaningful in my own lived experience through all the seasons of my life? How do I take what I know, embody it, and live it? And so looking at this unseen burden for many care providers, right? Fatigue, burnout, vicarious trauma, grief. There are more conversations about this in the modern world today, which I'm so, so grateful to see happening. And yet, the awareness of this is not still talked about on a mainstream level. That caring for others carries a cost that's not often named. This fatigue, physically, emotionally, the burnout, the vicarious trauma, the grief. And that unaddressed, these accumulate, not only affecting the care provider, but also the sustainability of the care that we're sharing for others. But all of this is impacted by these experiences. And not to make ourselves wrong for any of this, to honor the truth of our lived experience. And some of us may not feel these things. That is also our truth, right? Noticing again, how does this orient you to your truth? What shows up for you as we move through this? How can we deepen our awareness of this being a reality for many people who care for others in many different ways? So some common struggles that we may see when we're providing care for others, it affects us on many different layers, right? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, physically. The fatigue, the exhaustion, the loneliness, compassion fatigue, disassociation, burnout, all of this are ways that this may impact us. And so when we're looking at the heaviness of that, one of the most profound practices that we can offer ourselves and embody is self-compassion and self-attunement. A foundation for sustainable care is how you treat yourself. How we treat ourselves pours out into how we treat others. And as care providers, it's often really easy for us to pour care into others. And then we may start to neglect ourselves, our physical needs, our emotional needs, our spiritual needs. This is a common practice. Work-life balance can be really, really tricky for many, many people who care for others. So this idea of attunement, the process of being deeply aware of, respecting, and flexibly responding to the emotional and physical states of another person. And most people who are watching this are care providers, right? We care deeply about the world around us. That's why we do what we do. And so we have, we're rooted in being attuned to others, right? On lots of different levels, emotionally, physically, kind of noticing where are they at? What are they doing? How are they doing right now? It's a core foundation of building secure emotional relationships, empathy, closeness, and trust. So what would it be like if we were to explore this idea of self-attunement? That our relationship with ourself is the longest relationship we will ever have. What if we brought this awareness, right? This emotional, this flexible responsiveness to emotional and physical states, to ourselves. This idea of seeing ourselves not as a machine, but as a garden. Are there any plants in your garden that are drooping right now? Do they need a little more sunlight or a little less water? What can we do to get curious about how we can care for ourselves, to nourish and befriend our body, our needs, our spirit? So with attunement, self-attunement also comes self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff is one of my self-compassion teachers. She works out of the University of Austin and has been studying self-compassion for over 40 years, a wealth of resources if you'd like to dig into self-compassion. And she defines self-compassion as extending kindness, care, and understanding to oneself during times of perceived failure, inadequacy, or suffering. So treating ourselves as a good friend rather than being harsh and critical. And self-compassion can show up in a very tender way. When we think of self-compassion, we often think of this tenderness, right? A moment to say, this is really hard right now. I am doing the best that I can, right? It's okay to feel this. And while self-compassion can show us in this very tender and gentle way, compassion is also fierce, right? This is an aspect of compassion that maybe isn't talked about as often. So we think about this mama bear energy, right? We protect, we say, no, that's enough. This is not okay. I'm going to protect what is important to me. So, what's it like to consider ourselves, our health, our well being as important enough to protect with love, right? Fierce love, fierce compassion, to put ourselves in that place with ourselves. It's pretty easy for us to do it for the people we care for around us. How would we, what would we need to bring ourselves into that place of importance? What would that look like? What would we need in order to bring our own health and well being into a place of being fiercely protected? And so let's practice some words. And now, time to again turn towards our inner landscape or the world around us. If at any point turning inward doesn't feel supportive for you, you're welcome to stay in the room. Be where your feet are. Rest with what's in your environment rather than your inner landscape. And so for this particular practice, if it feels okay, we might take our hands and place them over our heart. We might give ourselves a hug if we prefer, just a way to offer ourselves a moment of tenderness, of attunement, of noticing. Your eyes could be softly open or gently closed. And you could leave one hand on your heart, and if it feels interesting, the other hand might come to the face, gently holding the face, or that self-hug that I offered, or perhaps a hand over your forehead or the side of your head feels more interesting. If you were to hold someone that you care for, might you offer that compassionate touch to yourself, softening the fingers and the palms wherever they rest? And taking a moment to notice the movement of the breath. How's the body feeling right now? Can we look towards what's here without making ourselves wrong? This moment of noticing, gosh, what am I feeling? The sensations. Am I feeling heavy? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling anxious? Do I feel like I'm swirling in my head? Do I feel grounded and steady? A moment to notice what's here without making ourselves wrong. We could name it. Oh, I'm feeling sad right now. I'm feeling energized right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know what I'm feeling. Lost, confused, numb. All of you is welcome here. We're noticing, we're naming. And then perhaps a moment to nurture what's here. We're attuning to what's here. And this self-kindness, this compassion, this nurturing is really hard right now. I'm carrying a lot. Of course, I'm exhausted. Of course, I'm overwhelmed. This moment to be with yourself the way you would a good friend, to turn towards the hurt with curiosity, tenderness, and compassion. Reminder that we're not alone when we hurt. Don't need to fix it. We're being with our humanity exactly as it's expressing. And several more breaths here. Just noticing how you would like to spend that time. Whenever you feel complete with this practice, the releasing, the hands, the gaze, maybe some gentle movement to reawaken. Any way you would like to move your body, if you want to sing or dance or hum, drink some water, cry, scream, all of it is welcome here. How would energy like to move? Perhaps noticing, what was that experience like for you? To offer yourself compassion, not just with words, but with touch or with breath or anything else that showed up for you. Again, I have a self-compassion meditation available, these different channels. And so we'll turn towards some of the things that may be painful or hurt for us in the work that we do when we care for others in the world. Grief and the cumulative sorrow in care work. My teacher is Megan Devine. She's a mental health professional who has been working in grief and a grief advocate, a grief positive advocate for many, many years, exploring this idea of changing the narrative of grief as something that we need to fix to something that we tend to and walk with, that there's nothing wrong with grief, that grief is an emotion, it's a friend that comes to support us. And so this idea of grief is a natural response to change. I'll say that again. Grief is a natural response to change. We often associate grief as coming with death or endings. And yes, those are changes. But that grief can emerge in so many different ways on so many different layers. That it's not limited to death or endings. I love this image that Megan provides that, this is what we may think grief is, right? Grief that's related to death. That is a natural experience in all of our lives. And yet this is the everyday grief that we don't call grief. That this emerges in so many different ways, spaces that are often unnamed. One of my favorite resources for grief is The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Frances Weller. This is in addition to Megan Devine's book, It's Okay, You're Not Okay. I would recommend both of those books if you're interested in deepening into grief and grief care. And Frances explores 6 gates of grief. Everything we love, we will lose. This is the grief that we often associate with the word, right? Everything we love, we will lose. Then we have many different other gates that you can explore here on this slide, as well as in the book. And I'd like to name gate 3 because this is something that we often experience in providing care for others, the grief of the sorrows of the world. That as we work with others, we care for others, we're often exposed to these sorrows, this hurt, and to normalize that that's a part of this experience. There's nothing wrong when we feel this. What's it like to tend to our grief, to attune to our grief, to invite self-compassion with our grief as a natural response to change? Not something to fix, something to walk with. And this slide explores a lot of different ways that grief expresses. These are common experiences. And because we don't talk about it and we don't name it, we may look at some of these things and not realize that they could be an expression of grief. Physical pain, difficulty reading, not being interested in things you used to be interested in, confusion, emotional flooding. That all of these may or may not be an aspect of your lived experience. And could we get curious about their relationship to grief? Grief expresses in many different ways. Some of us prefer to express emotionally. Some of us prefer to have private reflection and processing. Some of us seek meaning and creativity. Some of us look for action and purpose. There's no wrong way or right way to grieve. Our grief is unique to us. And so, what's it like to give ourselves permission to let grief express in whatever way it's moving? Not just the grief in ourselves, but also the grief in those that we work with. This idea of tending and befriending, inviting curiosity and compassion, and bringing in this concept of both and. That our humanity, our human experience is so complex, and that we are able to feel multiple things at once. Not just the concept of this, right? As care providers, nothing I'm saying right now is new. What is it like to embody these things, to bring it from a knowing into a lived experience? Right? To feel both and as an experience in our body, our heart, our soul, not just a concept that we understand. This idea that someone could both feel the sorrow and hurt in the world and wonder and awe for the beauty in the world, that both of these things can be held at the same time. That this human experience is full of paradox. Right? These contrasts, these opposites of things emerging in the same moment, that they can coexist, that it's not either or, it's both and. An aspect of this hurt as well is vicarious trauma and burnout. This is something that as care providers, we can experience. This, difference between vicarious trauma and burnout. When we look at vicarious trauma, or sometimes it's called secondhand trauma, this is repeated exposure to client or patient trauma stories. It's rooted in deep empathetic connection that we're feeling and being with different experiences that people are having that hurt. Versus burnout, which is more associated with chronic stress, high workloads, lack of support. This is more rooted in systemic pressure and exhaustion. And both of these things are an aspect, or can be an aspect, of providing care for others, bringing awareness to these. Not just awareness in our head, but how does this live in our bodies? Right? How does chronic stress feel? Burnout feel? What is that like for me? This is a question we can get curious about. The felt sense of burnout, the felt sense of vicarious trauma, the felt sense of grief. And many of us as care providers on this call, watching now or on the replay, we've got a healthy toolkit of somatic tools and practices that we weave into our care, right? For others, even potentially for ourselves. And I'd like to introduce the idea that in addition to those tools, there is value there. Please don't get me wrong. Can we explore the idea that our nervous system may not need another practice for enduring difficult things, for regulating and controlling our emotional state? Perhaps our soul and our spirit and our bodies may need more beauty and play and belonging. We may need more wonder and awe and pleasure. That these can be just as potent as a breathing meditation and a somatic tool. That rather than turning our focus on overperforming towards our self-care, what would it be like to look at more playful, open, receptive ways of living our life? Of living as we are in this messy humanity that we have. How can we invite more play into our lives? How can we invite more of a sense of community and connection and belonging? How can we have more moments of beauty and wonder and awe? What would we need to turn towards that experience and see what in here is for me? What do I need in my toolkit of self-care? And so let's practice. We just talked about some heavy, dense experiences that we may feel. And so this practice, relational breathing with nature, right? I've mentioned nature, beauty, wonder, awe, the natural world. We are a part of this idea of belonging to the natural world, not being separate from it. And so this particular exercise, you might, again, rest back, notice how you can be more comfortable here. And I'll be guiding this practice with connecting to a tree. You could use the image that I have here on the screen. Maybe there's a different tree that's really important to you or meaningful to you that you'd like to visualize. But for some of us, a tree may not be it, right? That may not really do anything for us. So you're welcome to change this out with a mountain or the ocean or the sun or a place in the cosmos, a nebula, or some kind of, constellation. Anything in the natural world around us, not just our Earth, the whole cosmos, that evokes a feeling of connection and belonging, wonder and awe. And so your eyes, I'll invite you to have your eyes softly closed if that feels okay. And if not, let your gaze rest on something in front of you that feels supportive. Maybe there is something natural in your environment, a plant or a tree out the window or something like that. And we'll rest back, just noticing if we could be 10% more comfortable. And we bring an adjustment to the body, the mind. Or said a different way, what's the kindest adjustment you could offer yourself right now? If ease were more important than precision. And turning towards the movement of the breath, finding that just right inhale and just right exhale, not forcing anything, just right for you. And this practice is a visualization. So you perhaps bring in this visual of a great tree in front of you. Remembering you can change that out for any other natural wonder that feels true for you right now, a mountain, the sun, the ocean. As you see this tree on the inhale, breathing from the tree up into the body, you can notice if that comes in the form of a color of light or something else, breathing from the tree into the top of the head, all the way through down to the feet. And as you exhale, exhaling the breath from the feet back to the roots of the tree. This receiving from the tree, this oxygen that is life-sustaining for our bodies. Moving through the body, and as we exhale, releasing anything that doesn't serve us. This could be the carbon dioxide that nourishes the tree. On a very physical level, we're breathing in oxygen and offering carbon dioxide. This relationship with us and the tree or the natural world, nourishing each other with every breath. And if we want to add to the visualization, we might visualize a healing, nourishing, restorative color of light from the tree into the body. This shower of light through the body. And as this shower moves through, it releases anything that doesn't serve us emotionally, mentally, physically. And you can see that as a gentle gray smoke releasing and returning back to the tree. As we inhale this nourishment, this restoration from the natural world, moving through the body, supporting us, holding what hurts. Letting whatever's complete and ready to go release and return to the world around. The earth knows how to hold that which is really heavy for us to carry. The vastness of the earth and the cosmos, there is enough space to feel and be, and let that be as wide and vast as it needs to be. With every inhale, this receiving from the world around. And with every exhale, this releasing, this offering, this letting go. Several more breaths here, just yours, noticing how you would like to spend that time. As you follow the next exhale out, if it feels interesting, a moment of gratitude for yourself, the world around, and this relationship, this belonging to the world. Whenever you feel complete, a moment to reflect, to pause, to notice any impact of that particular practice on your lived experience. Any change that you've created, anything that feels new or different or shifted for you. Just remembering that change is possible for me. And also the part of you that is constant and familiar and aware of it all. The fullness of your experience in this moment, being where your feet are, right here, right now. As we look at this idea of nourishment, this idea of sustainable self-care, and reconnecting with our purpose, we can explore this idea of what is self-care. And this is more than adding activities, bubble baths and massages and, yoga classes. Yes, those things can restore. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But can we explore the idea of self-care as saying no and removing things that drain us as much as it is adding in things that nourish and restore us? That oftentimes we need to set boundaries and remove things in order to create the space for our yes to come in. So self-care is this idea of energy management and self-kindness, bringing back in this idea of mama bear energy, right? Fierce compassion, fierce self-love, protecting what is important to us, ourselves, our health, our well-being. Self-care can emerge on many different levels, right? Psychological, emotional, spiritual. It's not just physical. And when we're looking at this idea of self-care, can we honor our seasons and our cycles? That we are not machines that are meant to constantly produce and be going and blooming in a constant state of summer. That we are cycles and seasons. We're ecosystems. That we need our winter, our autumn, as much as we need our summer and our spring. A reminder that no is a complete sentence, that we don't need to over-explain when we need to set boundaries around caring for ourselves, and that it's normal to feel guilty, and it's normal, it might feel a little out of our comfort zone. And so we practice setting boundaries as a practice. I have a slide here with boundaries in action that you're welcome to read in your own time for the sake of time on this call. I'm going to move through some of these slides more quickly. This will be available to you if you want to go in and journal on some of these things. What drains me? What is it time for me to say no to? How can I create a boundary to support that? And as I say no and clear space, how can I say yes to things that refuel me? different ideas for restorative activities. And what restores you will be unique to you. For some of us, we may want to order our groceries online because it drains us to go to the grocery store. And for others, we may want to go to the grocery store because that's what restores us, to be around the food and the fruit and the colors and the smells. So there's no right or wrong answer. Don't let someone else tell you what's right for you. What feels right as a felt experience that's uniquely yours. And this reminder that these moments that refuel don't have to be something big. What would it be like to microdose restoration throughout the day, right? That these little moments of joy, these glimmers of awe and wonder, 3 steady breaths in between sessions are moments that refuel. A little and often can be just as potent as a full hour restoration session. Little and often, comfort for the body, mind, and spirit. And we will continue on this idea of meaning, mortality, and living fully. So coming back to this idea of soul, of mortality, right? As a death doula and a grief tender, I deeply believe in conversations around endings, that our time here is limited. How can that orient us to what's important, right? So as we turn towards the end of our time here today, I have some self-inquiry prompts here. You might take this into a journaling exercise or a soul conversation with a friend. These are conversations that I have with clients that I work with, kind of, the meat of what we're exploring in conversation together, and then how to make this livable, to take this awareness and understanding and create a practical, meaningful change in our lives. So looking at these questions, right? How do I want to feel? When we're talking about soul, we're not talking about doing necessarily. We're talking about this lived experience, right? A deeper wisdom, a deeper knowing that's calling us forward in our lives. So how do I want to feel in this life? And rather than thinking, oh, I need to go A, B, and C and do this in order to feel that way, how can I already notice those moments here? If I want more peace and steadiness, more balance, what already helps me feel that right now? To honor that feeling is here already, and we can also desire more of it. That both of those things are here at the same time. And I love this question. If I had nothing to prove to anyone, what is the next step I would take out of the energetic expression of my own being? If I didn't have to prove anything to anyone, what's the next step that my soul is calling me towards? Right? What does my soul want to experience in this one precious life? And we'll be leaving with more questions than answers. These aren't answers that just come to us, right? These are things that we reflect on, that we explore in meditation and journaling and conversation. This curiosity and compassion that we bring in. And, a session with me wouldn't be complete without exploring our mortality, this natural experience of death and endings that impacts all of us, a natural part of our humanity. And this inquiry, again, something that you can dig into. If I found out I had 5 more years to live, what would I stop doing and what would I start doing? If it were 1 year, what would I stop and start? If it were 3 months, 1 week, 1 day, 1 breath, how would I change this next breath right here, right now, feeling the fullness, the aliveness of this moment? And as I reflect on all of this, how does it orient me to what is most important? And what is one aligned action that I can take today to connect with what is important and meaningful to me in my life today? As we come to the end of the session, there's this idea of, okay, with everything that I've experienced and explored and received and remembered in this talk today, is there one aligned action for the week? Right? Something that, you know what, this feels really important for me to do. How do I take this remembering and turn it into creating change and bring it into my lived experience? And I always like to ask my clients, do you have a gem from today's session? This is a remembering an aha moment, something that was meaningful to you. Just kind of reflecting, is there something that I'm going to take with me from this into my life? You're welcome to drop it in the chat if you like, or bring it up in a conversation with a friend, or reach out to me, send me an email. I'd love to hear how this landed for you today. And a self-kindness reminder, I am always doing the best that I can. And so I hope that this conversation today was supportive and offering you some ideas, some awareness, some remembering around how you can continue to care for yourself so that you can sustainably care for others in the world around you. That whatever your soul and your purpose is calling you towards, that you can explore this and bring this with you moving ahead. And if it would feel supportive to have some one-on-one care, to continue this conversation with me, I have several different spaces that I offer care in. All of these different ways. Most of the conversations I have with the clients that I work with weave a lot of this in together. The embodiment practices, the soul conversations about grief, emotional well-being, endings, all of these natural experiences that we have. And for anyone on the call who's an Alternative Balance member, anyone watching the replay, there's a special code for 20% off of a one-on-one session or one of my care plans for attending this talk. When you get this deck, you can hit this link and it'll take you to my website where you can learn more about the care that I offer, the different ways that I work with people. See if there's something in there that feels supportive for you. And several ways we can stay in touch. You can check out my website, join my newsletter. I send out meditations and information there on upcoming talks and different explorations in this world that I share. We can connect on Instagram, or if you'd like those free meditations on Spotify and YouTube, you'll have links to all of those resources here. So thank you all so much for sharing your afternoon with me, spending some time today. If you have any questions, we have space now. I do want to be mindful of your time. We are at time for this session. So there's time here for questions, reflections, and also you're welcome to contact me afterward if that feels more supportive for you. Thank you all.